I've never had a dull day. Dun, dun. I have a bizarre but fun job. Theater and Broadway are many things. Dun, 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 dun. Boring? They're not. I write with abandon, and I don't care. Let the chips fall where they may. I don't need to be nice to Bono and The Edge. They've written a lousy score to Spider-Man. The show sucks. I'm happy to beat up on it. If you don't have a bold, strong voice, you're not going to be good at this game.
You'll be great. Gonna have a...
Where did it start? Like this type of frankness, this candor that you are known for. Where did it first begin?
Well, I think you'd have to ask my mother or my therapist that. But I think because I was not a theater kid, because I wasn't in love with Broadway, and I wasn't in love with all of these Broadway stars, and I didn't dream of being on Broadway, and I didn't dream of being an actor or have anything to do with the theater, really. I always was able to keep it at an arm's length and look at it with a little kind of, if you will, clinical detachment. So because I wasn't a fan, and I found a lot of it totally absurd, even though I liked the people, but they're insane people in the theater. I mean, it's a good thing they made it in the theater because they could not possibly hold jobs in any other world. They're like circus animals, you know, they're wildly crazy, entertaining creatures. And I wrote about them without awe, but with a sense of fun and a little bitchiness and a little snideness, because that's who they are. Theater people are very bitchy and very snide, and they're always trying to run each other down, and it's not enough that my show succeeds, your show has to fail that same year. And so I was able to just kind of play on that rhythm and that atmosphere of the theater world, and I tried to capture that in my writings and in my columns and the way I talk about Broadway.
You were planning to attend law school.
Right.
And then made the diversion to the theater world.
The week before I graduated from Columbia, this guy offered me a job editing a little theater magazine called Theater Week. I'd never done any journalism before. I'd never reviewed a show before. I'd never interviewed anyone in the theater before. And the very first day on the job, I was assigned to go meet this old guy who was writing a Broadway show. And I'd never heard of him before. And I went up to his office above the Mark Hellinger Theater. And he's at a piano. He was banging away at the piano, and he said, "Kid, come on in, come on in." And I said, "Hello, how are you, sir?" And he said, "I want to play you some songs for my new show." And I really was unsure who he was. And I said, "Well, can you play me something? I know you've written a lot of other shows, sir. Can you play me something I may have heard before?" And he said, "Well, how about this one? Dun, 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 dun."
Clear the tracks. You got nothing to do but relax. Blow a kiss. Take a bow. Honey, everything's coming up roses.
Dun, 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 and it was Julie Stein.
Oh, wow.
My first interview was Julie Stein. And I mean, I knew some of the songs, and I'd heard Gypsy before, but I was not steeped in the musical theater at all. But I spent 2 hours with him, and he played practically every song he ever wrote. And he was great, great fun, and we became friends. And through him, I got to meet Cy Coleman, Charlie Strauss, Steve Sondheim, Jerry Herman. It just seemed like such a fun world to be a part of that I hung around for 20 years.
Are there modern versions of those composers?
The closest to those guys are Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman, who wrote Hairspray, and Catch Me If You Can. They're very much an old school, very facile writers, fast writers, good tunes, funny lyrics. They're about the only ones. Most of the young composers I come across now, the Jason Robert Browns, the Michael John LaCuses, the Adam Gettles, they all want to be like Steve Sondheim. And none of them is, because I don't believe that their scores on the whole have theatrical muscularity that you really have to have in a Broadway musical. And I think Shaman and Whitman are the only guys writing today who have that. You know, Good Morning Baltimore, opening of Hairspray. I mean, that is a classic Broadway opening number.
Good morning, Baltimore. And someday when I take to the floor, the world could wake up and see Baltimore and me.
Tells you exactly what world you're in, and this is the girl you're going to be with, this is who she is, and this is what she wants. Mm-hmm. Boom, like that. Mm-hmm. And it's a musical comedy. And on the whole, musicals work best in the musical comedy tradition, certainly at the box office.
You told Broadway World almost 10 years ago that you would like to see theater become part of contemporary culture again, and that they're just not tapping into anything that's going on in the world today. Since then, do you think that theater has done a good job of trying to be more relevant?
Oddly enough, because of shows like Glee, I think that theater has entered the mainstream culture.
Don't bring around a cloud to rain on my parade.
Things like American Idol, a lot of these kids are singing musical theater type songs. So I think when I made that comment 10 years ago, one had the feeling that, at least I had the feeling, that the theater had been kind of marginalized. But that is not the case anymore. I mean, Glee is one of the most popular shows of all time now, and it's about kids who want to be in Broadway musicals.
Thanks.
There's a new NBC series called Smash, produced by Steven Spielberg, that is about making a Broadway musical based on the life of Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn the musical? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Don't you bring me down today, no matter what we do.
And this is a show that's all about the Broadway world on mainstream television. So I think in the last 10 years, Broadway has lodged itself firmly in the mainstream.
What's your feeling on using movie stars as Broadway box office?
I know my actor friends who are not stars often complain that jobs are being taken away from them and they're giving them to the celebrities. The fact of the matter is, none of these shows would get done if the star were not the anchor of it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of employment is being provided for a lot of no-name actors because these stars are agreeing to come to Broadway. You would not get up a revival of Fences in today's climate without Denzel Washington. Mm-hmm. So all the 5 or 6 other actors around him are working because he agreed to do that play. You would not get up a revival of How to Succeed in Business without really trying, without Daniel Radcliffe. So there is 25 kids in the chorus who are working because Daniel Radcliffe said yes to How to Succeed in Business. That is just fact of life on Broadway now, because Broadway is tourist-driven, and tourists want to see people they know.
Mm-hmm. What are some examples that you can think of off the top of your head of stars that worked and stars that did not?
The greatest one that I ever saw worked, surprisingly so, there was a revival several years ago now of Annie Get Your Gun that Bernadette Peters started. And they replaced Bernadette Peters with a country western singer named Reba McEntire, who'd never done, not a Broadway show before, she'd never been in a show before, period. And she was tremendous. I mean, she took a real second-rate production of Annie Get Your Gun and turned it into a first-rate evening. She had wit and sparkle and charisma, and she was absolutely amazing. And since that time, I think this was back in 98 or 99, everybody has tried to entice her back to the theater because she did great business. Now, the one who didn't work was Julia Roberts. She was in a rather dreary play called 3 Days of Rain a few years ago. And here she's arguably the most famous movie star in the world, female movie star in the world. As soon as she walked on stage, you knew she couldn't handle it. It wasn't that she was embarrassing or that she didn't know her lines or anything like that. She had no charisma on stage at all. She just looked like a limp dish rag. She was unable to project Julia Roberts' charm in a live setting to 1,000 people. She is somebody who works best when the camera's close up. Her face is interesting, she's beautiful, she's charming on the big screen, but she disappeared on the stage.
Do you like when they fight back?
I love it when they fight back. Yeah, in fact, in my column, I often will turn over the column to someone I've attacked or zinged if they write a funny letter, funny email that makes good points but with a sense of humor. And if they make fun of me, that's even better. So many times I've said, I had my say on Wednesday and ran your show down and made fun of you. Now, you wrote a good letter, I'll put it in on Friday.
Well, how much weight do you acknowledge that your voice has in the success of a show or the lack of success in a show?
The influence I have is that because I go to see things early and because I have a fairly good eye for what's working and what's not working, and because I have good sources so I can find out if there's trouble backstage, I can stamp a show very early on, whether it's going to be good or bad. And once I stamp that show, it's very hard for the show to overcome a column of mine that says there's trouble in this play.
What would be some lessons that you could give me to be a little more frank?
You either have it or you don't have it. And I'm afraid, Joey, you don't have it. You just simply have to, one, not care what people think about you. As soon as you start to worry, oh, they might be offended if I write this, that, you're never going to be in the racket that I'm in. But you also can't take yourself seriously. You have to have a sense of humor about yourself. You have to realize that you're covering show business. People are not dying here. Yes, they may be out of jobs, but on the whole, most of them will get other work, and most of them can afford to be out of job.
There you have it. I may
Lessons
not be
from the
doomed
master.
to be nice forever.
It's true. And by the way, the one thing I learned in the course of my career, the meaner I was, the more money I got paid.
That would make sense. I'm very nice.
You'll always be poor. Good luck in your poverty.
That's great. Thank you.